Welcome everyone to week 7. My name is Instructor Neville and I'm your guest lecturer for today. Last week we covered global inequality and how to solve it. Today we shall be focusing on environmentalism and how the international community deals with this issue. This is one of the most controversial issues in modern international politics that has so far proven to be very difficult to solve. The fundamental reason for this is because while most of the environmental problems in our world take place throughout it, the keys to solving it lie within each state individually. This creates a fundamental mismatch, which has led to a call for better and more expansive collaboration and cooperation. Today we shall cover the causes of our problems, the theoretical explanation of how this has developed, the liberal and realist response, potential solutions, the barriers to these solutions, and finally we'll look at some of the agreements that have been signed so far. Our planet has many resources that are non-renewable and many others that are, as long as they are consumed at a sustainable rate. One of the greatest causes of environmental problems is therefore population growth. In 2012, the population topped over 7 billion, compared to just 3 billion in 1960. While the birth rate in some countries is increasing, in many it is slowing, and in some countries like Japan it is negative. What is causing this population growth is the global increase in life expectancy. If you look at countries like Japan, with a large middle class, if enough countries can develop to their level that the population growth could slow. Coupled with population growth is the concept of consumption growth. If we consume too much too inefficiently, it makes the population seem even larger. For example, if everyone in the developing world consumed like the average American does, it would have the same effect as increasing the global population to 72 billion people. We must therefore consume in a sustainable way. What we have for environmental problems is the collective action problem. This is a situation in which a group of actors have a common interest but cannot collaborate to achieve it. You have touched on this before, but we shall go into more depth here. The most popular model used to explain environmental issues is called the tragedy of the commons. For this we must imagine a fenced-in field with several cattle farmers sharing it. All the cows are owned by the individual farmers, but the land is open to all. If a farmer brings in a new cow into the field, he alone gains the profit, while the negative of less grass is shared by all the farmers. It is in the best interest of each farmer to bring in as many cows as possible, but eventually they will all run out of space and grass. The tragedy is that by pursuing their own interests, they doom the collective to a disaster. This could explain illegal poaching very well, or air pollution. So how do our main two theories approach these issues? For liberalism, this issue fits in well with their prescription of the world. They make two central claims. One, that environmental problems can be solved with collaboration, and two, that it gives self-interested states a reason to pursue collaboration. Liberals also place a lot of faith in international institutions implementing the collective actions taken by states. What needs to be discovered is the maximum sustainable yield. This is the maximum that a renewable resource can be harvested each year without reducing the amount that can be harvested in future years. This number, though, may be difficult to obtain. International organizations are in the best place to monitor and record in order to discover this without bias. Realists, on the other hand, are far more pessimistic about the chances of cooperation. They see the need for states to compete overriding the need to cooperate. For example, they point to states concerned that China must suffer at the same rate with environmental targets. The concern here is that China will gain at their expense. Realists also look at the potential for conflict over resources that are non-renewable. Realists predict that states will use their power to control these key resources. Many people point to the war in Iraq as a fight for oil. Realists clearly have far less solutions for these problems. Let us turn to those solutions in terms of collective action. One solution is to reduce the number of actors by breaking up the world into regions so they can be held more accountable. Another is to focus more on the long-term future of the planet. If we keep our heads in the sand, then the world can appear perfectly fine. It is only by looking at the long-term consequences can we address our actions now. We need to eliminate the free rider problem by having better monitoring and reporting so that states can be held accountable for what they do. There could also be selective incentives for participating. For example, developing nations who stick to targets could receive special developmental aid. There also needs to be a world leader or group of leaders that can push for environmental reform. So far, America has been unwilling to do this. There also needs to be quotas and regulations. These can be difficult to implement, and what definitely needs to develop is enforcement. So what are the barriers to this cooperation? A lot of the previous ideas, including quotas and regulations, flies in the face of free trade. This is a well-established international norm and will be very difficult to shift. Environmental policies often have to compete with economic ones. If a country is suffering financially, they may look to strengthen their economic position at the expense of the environment. These issues are incredibly complex. They can overlap or even compete with each other, making the solution all the more elusive. There is also the issue of equality. Poorer countries have every reason to think that rich countries were able to develop economically because they exploited the environment with little or no concern at the time. Even today, these countries consume far more than the poorer ones. It can be difficult for these countries to accept permanent cuts or restrictions, as they will forever have consumed less. Closely related to this is the difficulty of economic competitiveness. Developing countries are concerned that environmental agreements will leave them underdeveloped compared to the already developed nations, while developing states are looking over their shoulder and are worried that these agreements could restrict their ability to compete with a rising star. This is particularly relevant for China and America. The final difficulty is the uncertainty of the science. It is unclear how much danger we are in and what the most dangerous things we are doing. This is especially true for greenhouse gases. Without certainty, it is much easier for states to avoid agreeing to anything. Finally, this week, let us look at some of the international environmental agreements and assess their progress. One of the most important agreements to cover environmental issues is called the Kyoto Protocol, which was signed in 1997 and was an agreement to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 2012 to below 1990 levels. It's at different levels for countries and at different stages of development. Unfortunately, it was described as too weak and too restrictive. It did not lower them enough, but it was still seen as too restrictive for some countries considering their dependency. America, for example, failed to pass the treaty. Supporters of the treaty claim that it is better than nothing and it is moving in the right direction. Since the agreement, while there have been several attempts at more negotiations, there has been little actual movement. So far, the obstacles have proven to be too difficult to overcome. The longer we wait, though, the more difficult of a recovery it will be. Next week is our final week, and we shall be covering the future of international politics.